remember those days if you were a parent? Or remember those days when you were 2 and you were living what was called the terrible 2s? And do you remember what was so bad about the 2s? It's because the child, the individualization of God at 2 said no. Every time the parent said do this, the child would say no. And you would say yes, and they would go no. And all they kept doing was no, no, no. And you, in your parental wisdom, or me in my parental wisdom, was trying to get that child to conform to make me happy. And that child would say back to me, I'm sorry, I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to make me happy, so no. And that went on, and you know what? My sons were both 2 at one time. Now they're 28, 29, and 26. And you know what they say today? No. Do you know what my wife tells me today? No. She is not responsible for my happiness. I am. And so as we explore this idea of no, we go back to the idea that was presented in the movie The Yes Man. Remember that with Jim Carrey? And how his life had collapsed, he was nothing, and so his friends had come to this seminar. And in this seminar, he had to say yes to everything. And he took piano or guitar lessons, he took Korean lessons. Anytime someone said yes, or asked him a question, he would say yes to it. And he did all these things, and they led to some horrific things, and they led to some things that led to a greater expression of life. And then at the very end, his life was collapsing, and he went to the guru, and he says, I've been saying yes, but it's not working. All this stuff is take the curse off of me. And he says, there's no curse. He says, but I'm saying yes. He says, you have to discern. You have to decide when it's to say yes, when it's for more life, when it's for more joy. Then you say yes. But when something or someone or an event or an idea comes into your life and it's not for the purpose of more, then you stand firm and you say no. Because self-love, number 1, is knowing who you are. You are the individualization of God. Every aspect of your being is the allness of God with the freedom to create and experience things beyond anything you've imagined. What I've come to understand so clearly is that God has a subjective mind. And this subjective aspect of the mind of God creates everything that's impressed in it. And we are the individualization that is using that subjective mind, and we're using it through our thought. We're using it through our conscious thought and our unconscious thought, and our unconscious thought represents 95 to 99.9% of all of our thought. So all of the thought of our ancestors, all of the thought of our parents, all of the thought of everything that's ever come into this universe is in that unconscious mind. Well, that unconscious mind is putting a mold into the subjective nature of God that creates, and that becomes our life. So to consciously create, all we are doing all of our lives is shifting the unconscious mind. And the way we do that is by building new habits of thought. And by building new habits of thought, we don't have to think. We have a program in our mind already about our health, about our love, about our money, about whatever it is we desire. So unconsciously, we have shifted the unconscious through habits. So what this is allowing us to do, it's knowing who you are, that you are the infinite expression of God, using the subjective mind of God, and you have the power right now to create. And then to be that means being your authentic self, which means deciding who you are and starting to live from that perspective. And today it's about acting that, living who you are. So that means saying yes, but a lot of times it means saying no. Because what I've come to understand in my life is that there are a lot of people, a majority of people believe that unless you can get someone in your life to behave as you want them to, you cannot be happy. So everyone in our lives is trying to get us to behave in a certain way. Politicians, religions, television commercials, everyone who's selling a product is trying to get you to believe that this product will make you better. I was at Golfsmith yesterday, and I was there because I was looking for a new club, because someone had told me this club will make my golf game better. And I said, well, let me take that into prayer. And yesterday prayer came out and said, let's do an impulsive buy today. Go buy that golf club. So I drove to Golfsmith. I got into Golfsmith, and the guy asked me there, so how often do you play? And I told him, what's your average score? I told him I'm shooting between 95 and 105. I play 4 to 5 times a year. He says, what type of clubs do you have? I said, I have knockoffs. He says, you have knockoffs? Don't you know that golf is a game of image? You've got to have the image. You've got to have the name clubs. And he says, why did you choose knockoffs? I says, well, when I got these clubs, I took the brand, the Titleist brand that I liked the most, and I took that club, and I had a knockoff made of that exact club. And I had both clubs for a week, and I hit hundreds of balls. And as I hit those balls, I realized I could not tell the difference in the clubs. I hit them both exactly the same. So in doing so, I chose those clubs. And so he showed me the club, and he says, okay, this is a club. It was last year's model. It's on sale. It will cost X. And I took it. I felt it. I hit a few balls with it. It felt really good. And I says, okay, let's take a club that's twice that amount, that club there. How am I going to feel the difference? Am I going to notice any difference? He says, no. If there's anything, it's so small you cannot begin to even notice the difference. So I said, that's great. So let's do this. So we went up to the register. We're ringing up. And he comes back and he says, so what do you do for a living? Does a minister love to hear that? I teach people how to empower themselves and create their lives. He says, are you a Catholic priest? And I said, no, I'm not a Catholic priest, but I come from a Catholic background. And he says, so here's what I want to tell you. And he looked at me and he said, when you really want to take this game serious, come back. And I'll sell you some clubs, and you can have the image of a golfer. And I looked at him and said, I don't need the image. I already have that in my mind, and it's not the club. He says, I know you teach that, but come back and I'll give you the clubs. And I said to him, you don't understand. I practice what I teach. You see what I said there to him in the very nicest of ways? I said no. I stood up for what I believed. Because if I don't stand up for what I believe, I'm saying that I don't value, I'm not worthy of all the things that I've adopted. It doesn't mean I won't consider it. So as we go through this, we want to look at the aspects. So why are we so reluctant to say no? Why is it so difficult for us to say no? Here's the thing. Society has said, and we have bought into, that we are here to please others. Started it with the day we were born. The day we were born, we were brought into this planet, and our parents have said, please me. Oh, look at how cute you are when you laugh. Laugh some more. Do you see how it starts getting fed, and it gets fed? And then we go to school, it's saying, oh, you sit in that little stool, you do this homework, you turn it in on such and such a day, and mom and dad reward with, here's a $1 for an A, or here's a chocolate bar, or whatever, and we're programmed, and so we become pleasers. And when we say no, we receive the cold shoulder. You ever get the cold shoulder? Do you ever get the look? I remember a young lady I dated in college. When I was not the man she wanted me to be, I would get the look. And every one of my friends knew the look. And I paid hell for that. Because all these friends would say to me, as a teenager, they would say to me, why don't you just be yourself? Why are you so worried about pleasing this person? What I can do now is I can look back, and because I was trying to please the person, I was never happy. Pleasing ourselves does not mean that we ignore others. It means we're living from our authenticity. We're living from that state of oneness. The other reason we're hesitant to say no is because saying yes is easy. When someone asks you something, it's so much easier to say yes. Because if you say no, you feel obligated to say something back. I got a call yesterday and someone wanted to do some coaching. And they says, "Are you available right now?" And I said, "No." And they said to me, "Well, why can't you do that right now?" They said, "I'm ready for it." I said, "Because today's my day off. And I honor my time." This was not an emergency. Can I clarify that? This was not an emergency by any stretch of the imagination. But I've declared that Saturdays is a day for me to love Lee, to play as Lee, to be as Lee, and to let the role of being a minister be off. Unless it's something where there's a dying going on or there's something going on Saturdays, I've declared that to be Lee Day. In order to do that, I have to say no. And so I did. And as soon as I explained that, it was understood. People will respect you because they see you are empowered, you are claiming your power, and they want the same thing. The other thing is they want you to be a team player. It's always about the T. You know, there's no I in team. You ever heard that before? There's no I in team. Come on, be a team player. Well, yeah, it's okay to be a team player as long as you're living up to your authentic, real I. Because to be a team player and to be sacrificing who you are is saying you're not good enough. The team is more important than you are. Is that a demonstration of self-love? I think not. You see, there's so much that's happening around us in our society, in all aspects of it, that is trying to get us, that is getting us to think outside of us, being our authentic selves and saying yes. Yes to Lee, yes to myself, and no to things that are not who I am. What are the problems of saying no? Here's the biggest one. We overextend ourselves. We say yes to so many things that our plate becomes overflowing, doing things for others, not able to do things for ourselves. So when people come into spiritual classes, and I'm saying to them, well, you've got to do a half hour of homework a night, they're saying, I'm overextended. The question I ask the student is this: is the homework for you? Will this make a difference in your life? Will another event, is it for you? Will it make a difference in your life? You have the power to choose. Do you see? It's about that idea of empowering yourself. When you're making a choice, you're always choosing from the aspect of knowing who you are. This is one of the great things that I admire in John DeMartini as he teaches. The very first thing that he comes and he teaches is, do you know your top 5 values? Because if you don't know your top 5 values, you're living the values of every other person that comes into your life. Because once you know your values, then every decision, every act that you do is based on that value. So to give you an idea of what these values are, for me, spiritual awareness is number 1. That is my number 1 value. Everything in my life is about becoming more spiritually aware. You notice I didn't say becoming greater than. I didn't say I'm going to grow. I'm already that, just as you are. But as I become more aware of it, I can then use the power to create more consciously. My second value is to teach. And by teaching, I mean speaking on Sundays, teaching classes, and doing coaching and counseling. That's where I put all my energy. I love that. My next value is in my physical body to experience as much joy and pleasure as possible without hurting another. You see, I don't believe we came into this physical form for the purpose of going into pure silence and being bliss. We came here to create. And as we create things that are good for us, we feel joy. That's why we're here. So I've identified that the physical senses are there for my benefit, and I'm using them to create a joy-filled life. My fifth value is authenticity, or fourth value is authenticity. I battled between integrity and authenticity, but I found that if I was being authentically Lee, I was in integrity. The other one is being a part of community. That's a huge value for me, because what I realize is we weren't brought here to be alone, to live in isolation. We were brought here to interact. And every relationship that we have is for the purpose of allowing ourselves to be greater, allowing ourselves to be supported. Because I am not in a relationship with my wife for any other reason. The reason Jean and I have chosen to be together in the last 8 years, but prior to that it was all sex. Sex is still good, but we've got a different purpose, and the purpose is we want to grow in our spiritual awareness. We want to grow in our creativity. We want to grow in our ability to see the truth and help others. And we are there to support each other, to challenge each other to be that. And then when we do a good job, she rewards me. And that's where the sex comes back in. So, you're probably saying, I don't have a partner. Well, we can pray for that, but let's go on. So the one thing, too, is that when we don't say no, we never accomplish our own goals. We're always doing things for others. The other thing is, by not saying no, we're disallowing ourselves from seeing how worthy we are of great things. The benefit of saying no is you are saying to the world, I love myself so much that being my authentic self and being that in the world is the greatest gift I can give, not only to Lee, but to everyone. I'm reading a phenomenal book right now, and that book is by a person by the name of Charles Janell. And he wrote a book, it's called The Master Key System. I think it was written in 1914. And I've never heard metaphysics clearer. I find him at this time in my life clearer than Ernest Holmes, clearer than the Fillmores, clearer than anyone. And he talked about this, and he talked about, where is your power? Where is your power? And he said, it's simple. Your power is in service. Because as you serve, you give. As you give, you attract more. And that's the cycle of creativity. That's the cycle of life. So if you want more love, you've got to be more love. If you want more abundance, you've got to be more abundant in your mind. And he talks about this at a level, and he really brings it home when he says, by building conscious habits that go into the unconscious mind, we now are using the infinite power at a greater level than we ever could before. Because if you do one spiritual mind treatment in the morning and the rest of your day you're doing nothing but living in a society that's dragging you out of it, you are not going to demonstrate. So every thought, every word, every action that you're doing becomes a prayer. And all spiritual mind treatment is, it's a way to teach us to pray. It's a way to get us on the path. But the sum total of it breaks down as simply and easily as this: what you think, you create. So the tools that we talk about at Agape are about to change how and what we think, so it's in alignment with what we want. And as long as it's for the greater good of ourselves and for society, see, it's so much easier when we can demonstrate something that we want that lifts ourselves and also lifts others. There's a power. Here's the other thing. When you're with someone and you're praying for something, that power is magnified. Not because two people are praying, but because the belief is increased in the two. The belief is increased in the three. So people often ask me with this new thought, do I need community? All I've got to do is the practices. In the world today, I would say yes. Community is essential. Because if we're out in the world and we're doing our spiritual practice, it's easy to forget. But when you can come into a community like this and plug in, when you can come and take a class and plug in, when you can do that spiritual work one-on-one with a counselor or with a minister or whoever you're plugging in, you are lifting your vibration. You are reinforcing the creative power and your awareness in it. You are saying no to all that you don't want and yes to life. Do you notice how God just affirmed that so easily and effortlessly? This idea of no is something that you say to a child who needs to be pushed out of the nest. I am no longer going to empower that behavior anymore. This is something that a partner says to their partner, I am not going to support you in your addictive habit any longer. This is something you say to yourself and say, I am no longer going to play small. I'm no longer going to live an unconscious life. I am going to take the time to uncover who my authentic self is. I'm going to take the steps to reveal that and live that every day. And I am saying yes to life by saying no to anything else. That is pure love. That is agape. See, one of the things that I've come to understand is, as a minister, people a lot of times will say, listen to my story, listen to my story. And I say to them in return, no, tell me what you want. You see, I don't want to feed someone's unconscious mind with more of what's already been created in it. I want to feed their unconscious mind with what they want so that they can take the subjective nature that is the infinite nature of God and create the life that they dream. And people will tell you that's not how you deal with it. You got to face the issue. You got to get into that issue. You got to be in that issue. No, I have faced the issue. I've said this is the issue, and it's told me what I want. And that's as far as I got to go with that issue. I am now going to create a habit of thought that is the opposite. And as I create that habit and do it over and over and over and over, I will now demonstrate that which I want. I will have fallen in love with Lee at a deeper level than I was before. Because if I love Lee, I'm only going to be thinking about more love. I'm only going to be thinking about more joy. I'm only going to be thinking about more health. I'm only going to be thinking about more money. Why? Because that's about creating more. That's the nature of God. God is not about being constricted. God is not about going to the past. God is about living from this moment and going further in infinite expansion, infinite experience, infinite love. That's what God is. But here's the key. It's not just what God is. It's who you are. Because as I see you, I don't see a physical human. I see the eyes of God looking at me, saying, I know I can be more, and I will prove it. And my love will radiate so big, so great. Can you feel it? The room is filled with that love right now. It's the love that you've created. It's the hope that you've created. It's the possibility that you've created. It's the recognition of God.